this is how the new GoPro Hero 12 performs in a studio environment using 3 compact lights and a microphone connected directly to the camera with the GoPro media mode. Just for comparison, here is how the Action 4 performs next to it, and now the Hero 12 again, and now the Action 4 again. Which one you think looks better? Let me know down below. And here is how the Hero 12 looks like straight out of camera without any color grading, and now with color grading. Anyhow, let me share with you the gear, camera settings and color grading method I used to achieve this look. Starting with the gear, the first item is the GoPro media mode, which allows me to connect the GoPro to an external microphone. The microphone I'm using today is the Holyland Lark Max wireless microphone. It's probably one of the best wireless microphones I've ever used, at least when it comes to sound quality. As for lighting, I'm using the Ambitful EF100 with a 60 by 90 centimeter softbox as my key light. It's positioned on my left, slightly above me, pointing downwards, and it's set to 25% of brightness. For practical lighting, I'm using 2 Ulanzi 40-watt lights. One of them is adding some color to the curtain behind me to make it a bit more interesting, and the other one is illuminating the background and increasing the overall exposure in the room because the room is pretty dark. Let's move on to the settings now. I set the profile to standard, not log or HDR. In this case, using HDR doesn't make any sense, and log has too much noise in the shadows. I've made a video about it a couple of days ago. You can watch it here. Next, I set the aspect ratio, resolution and frame rate to 16 by 9, 5.3K, 25p. Generally, 4K provides better noise performance in low light conditions with GoPro cameras, but I have 3 very powerful lights in here, so I decided to shoot in 5.3K to get more detail in the image. Next, I set the lens to linear because it provides the least amount of distortion in the image. Hyper smooth is off because the camera is mounted on a tripod. Next, I set the shutter speed to 1/50 to achieve the most exposure and natural motion blur in the image. Then I set the white balance to 5000 Kelvin. My key light is actually 5500 Kelvin, but I set the white balance on the GoPro to 5000 because the colors look much better. Finally, I set the ISO to 100 to minimize noise in the image, the sharpness to low because I prefer to add sharpness in post, and I set the color to flat because it provides the widest dynamic range and the most flexibility in post-production. Also, don't forget to go to preferences, then video, and set the bitrate to high and bit depth to 10 bit. This will give you the highest image quality and flexibility in post-production when color grading, which is what I'm going to show you next. I'm using Final Cut Pro and I have the clip here on the timeline. The first thing I'm going to do is add some sharpness. I'm going to leave it at 2.5, the default number. Next thing I'm going to do is add 2 color curves by pressing Option Q 2 times. The first one I'm going to use it for correcting the exposure, and I'm going to use the second one for correcting the white balance. So let's go to the first one. I'm going to add a point in here around the midtones, slightly drag it down. I don't want to go too much below 65 IRE with my skin tones. That's usually where I have my skin tones in all of my shots with all of my cameras. And I'm going to add a couple of points here just to adjust the overall exposure and add some contrast to the shot. Now let's move on to correcting the white balance. I can see right away that this shot is very red and yellow, so I'm going to remove it with the red curve and also the blue curve. First, I'm going to add a point in the midtones with the red curve, and I'm going to slightly push it down just to introduce some green. And I'm also going to add some blue to remove the yellow in this shot. And I'm kind of happy with how this looks like. Another thing I'm going to do is add color wheels just to increase the saturation slightly in the midtones. I think I'm gonna go to somewhere around here, 25%. Looks good. Next, I'm going to add hue saturation curves, and I'm going to balance out the colors in this shot. First thing I'm going to do is remove the magenta in here and the purple in here a little bit just to make it a bit more balanced overall. So I'm going to select these colors and I'm going to desaturate them just slightly. Another thing I'm going to do is select my skin tones and slightly adjust them. Another thing I want to do is remove the saturation on this wall. It looks a bit too green blue like. So I'm going to select this color. I think it's somewhere around here. And I'm going to desaturate the wall without actually desaturating too much of my t-shirt. Next thing I'm going to do is desaturate the shadows with the Luma versus saturation tool. I'm going to add a point somewhere around here and bring it down just to remove the saturation in the shadows. Next thing I'm going to do is add a slight vignette around me just to isolate myself a bit more from the background. I'm going to do this with color board and I'm going to select a shape mask. And I'm going to click on the outside and slightly reduce the midtones just to add a slight vignette. This is before and after. A very minor difference, but it definitely isolates me a bit more from the background. Now finally, I'm going to add a slight teal and orange color grade with color wheels. So let's add color wheels. I'm going to select my skin tones because I don't want to affect them too much. I'm going to click on view masks and only isolate myself. And now I'm going to disable the view masks. I'm going to click on outside and add a bit of blue teal to the background, maybe like here. I'm also going to add a bit more contrast with midtones. Play around with the colors here just to see what I like more. And I'm going to play with the mix slider to see where it looks the best. I think somewhere around here, like let's say 35%. And I think I'm kind of happy with these results. So let me break down everything. First of all, I added some sharpness. Then I adjusted the exposure and contrast with color curves. Then I fixed the white balance. Then I added some saturation to the midtones. Then I adjusted and balanced the colors in this shot with hue saturation curves. Then I isolated myself from the background with color board by masking my face out. And finally, I added a minor color grade with color wheels by isolating my skin tones and pushing everything in the background towards blue/teal. As you can see, color grading makes a big difference, so don't skip this part. It's equally as important as setting the correct camera settings and using proper lighting. And all of these are far more important than buying a new camera. Thanks for watching.